as you can see, this setup's a little bit different today. I'm going to try to use some visuals with our graphs as we look at our trig transformations. So I'm going to close this and we're going to see if this still films, and hopefully it'll stay filming. So hopefully that's still going. Now you can see we have our graphs up here on the screen. Hopefully the visual is okay because I know we only have part of the board. So we'll see what happens here. Okay, so right now I have my sine wave graphed. I wonder what that looks like. I guess we'll just figure this out. Okay, we're going to look at some transformations. There are 3 different things that we're going to be changing here. We've already talked about amplitude and period. We're going to be changing those up, and then we're also going to introduce what is called a vertical shift. So we're going to start by changing the period of our trig functions. So if you remember, we see 1 trig cycle in 2 pi radians. So what happens is if we change that, with this function here, we have the sine of 2 theta. What this is telling me is I'm going to see 2 cycles in the 2 pi. Okay, so we're going to double up how many cycles we see in the 2 pi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 2 pi divided by 2, and that tells me the new period length for this trig function is pi. So if I type that into the computer here, we should see it show up on the screen. I'm going to be typing in the sine of 2x. And so now what's happening is we're seeing twice as many waves as we saw originally. Okay, hopefully we can see that. Hopefully it makes sense. Same thing with this one, but now I have theta over 3. This one is telling me that we're going to see 1/3 of a cycle in 2 pi. So we're still going to take that 2 pi and I'm going to divide it by the 1/3 to see what my new period is. Dividing by 1/3 is the same as multiplying by 3. So here we're going to see a period length of 6 pi. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to get rid of the 2x, and now I'm going to do the sine of x over 3. So now we see a much smaller sine wave there. Okay, I'm going to close this, make sure that we can kind of see that, a little bit more screen. We see 1/3 of the trig cycle happening in 2 pi. If I were to zoom out, this trig cycle ends about here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's showing 6 pi. All right, moving forward here. Now we're looking at a change of amplitude. So if we have a number out front, what that's going to do is it's just going to stretch or compress our y values. So on this first one here, I have an amplitude of 5. So what that's going to do from my midline, I'm going to go 5 above and 5 below. So let's change our graphs that we're seeing over here. I'm going to change this. Oh, I'll just get rid of them. Change this one to cosine of x. And now, we'll zoom in so we can see that a little bit more. I'm going to type in 5 cosine of x. Whoa! See how that jumps off that screen? So now we're going from our midline to 5 and then down to -5. We've changed the amplitude. We'll see the same thing here, but instead our amplitude is 1/3. So we're actually going to take that trig function and we're going to condense it down. So we're going to see it get smaller. So let's see what happens there. So now I'm going to have 1 divided by 3 cosine of x. So that one, if I zoom in, we can see that our red graph is our original, and then the green graph has the amplitude of 1/3, so it's been condensed down. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we've got a couple more here. This is where we see a vertical shift. All we're going to do here is we're going to take our actual graph and just move it up or down so many units. So this, we're going to see a vertical shift, and we're going to go up 2 units. So I'm just going to type this back in here. We have our sine of x, and now I have my sine of x plus 2. So if I zoom out, we can see that we've just taken that sine wave and we've moved it up 2 units. Here, this would be a cosine wave, and it's going to have a vertical shift. It's going to go down 4 units. So I'll type that in here. We'll just see that, the cosine of x minus 4. So now it's cosine, move down 4 units, and that's it. Okay, kind of looks like we got bacon or something going on the screen. Again, hopefully you can see it. So I've got 2 examples down here where it's just showing all these transformations combined. So this one, we're going to have an amplitude of 6, a vertical shift, it's going to go up 2, and then we're going to have a period of 2 pi over 3. So we're going to bring that in. Since this is sine, I'll just go to my original sine wave, and I'm going to change this one at a time. So I'm going to have 6 sine of x. So now we can see that amplitude change. And then I'm going to go ahead and move that up 2 units. So now we see it move up 2. Now the maximum is going to be 8. The minimum is going to be negative 4. And now I'm going to change that period, and I'm going to put 3 on my x. So we see a lot more waves going on because we're seeing 3 where we originally would have seen 1. Making sure I feel okay about that. Feels good. Any questions, let me know. Here, this one, we're going to have an amplitude of 1/2. We're going to have a vertical shift. We're going to go down 1. And then we're going to have a period. We're going to take our 2 pi and divide it by 1/4, which will give us 8 pi. All right, so last little awkward computer movement here. I've got my cosine of x. So now I'm going to take 1/2 my cosine of x. So here we see it shrink, much smaller, shorter. Then we're going to move it down 1 unit. So we just saw it shift down. And now I'm going to change that period by dividing this by 4. All right, so we see it get a lot flatter here. This one's pretty big. If we come over here, let's see, 8 times 3, so that's going to be about 24. We would see it finish somewhere right there. You probably can't see that. I can. Now I'm just making a fool of myself. Hopefully this makes sense. Transformations, we've got amplitude, period change, and vertical shift. Come back and we're going to talk about a phase shift when we start moving it left and right. Okay, I got to find what my button's pushing, and I'm going to end it here. Hopefully this made sense.